You were always the problem solver, the resilient one, the one who could handle anything. You pushed through, you absorbed pressure, you carried the load with no complaints, until one day you couldn't. And now, small things overwhelm you. You find yourself feeling anxious about things that never used to bother you before. You snap over something trivial, and you're wondering, what happened to me? And people around you are asking you, so what was the straw that broke the camel's back? But here's the part that no one talks about. You see, it wasn't the straw that broke the camel's back. It was everything that the camel had already been carrying before the straw. This is Toxic Physiology. Hi, I'm Dr. Mazrui, and in today's episode, we are going to be talking about the nervous system. Yes, I know, it is boring. You're going to be saying, Anha, I left biology at GCSE and I do not want to know anymore, but I assure you, I would never subject your mind to anything even remotely boring, especially in my free time. Now, the nervous system is so important to understand because it's probably the center of most of your problems. And unfortunately, we keep hearing about it. We keep hearing about nervous system this, nervous system that, dysregulated, blah-de-blah-de-blah. But no one really explains what it means. Okay, so let's start. Now, so we have the central nervous system, and in your central nervous system, you have your brain and you have your spinal cord. Now, this is what we call the processing center, okay? It receives all information over here and then it starts sending commands. Branching out from the central nervous system is your peripheral nervous system. And the peripheral nervous system basically has all of the nerves that carry signals to and from the rest of your body. Now, this peripheral nervous system, I would split it into two parts. You have the somatic system, which controls all voluntary movement. So when you decide to move your hand, when you decide to walk, when you decide to speak, this is all part of your somatic nervous system. This is not what we're going to be talking about today. And then there is the part that most people never think about, but is actually going to be the most important part of our physiology, and that is the autonomic nervous system. Now, you don't get to decide your heart rate. You don't consciously control your digestion. You don't choose when your stress response activates. This system runs quietly in the background all day, regulating almost everything that keeps you alive. Your heart rate, your breathing, your digestion, your hormones, your muscle tension, even how alert or how tired you feel. And it's actually one of the central topics we are going to be revisiting over and over and over again. Why? Because one of its most important jobs is this. It is constantly scanning your environment and your internal state, asking one question. Are we safe? When it senses safety, it shifts your body into repair mode. When it senses threat, even subtle threat, it shifts your body into survival mode. You need your autonomic nervous system to survive, and it makes that decision automatically. You don't get to tell your autonomic nervous system, I think it's time for you to start getting a bit stressed right now. No. It makes that decision whether you want it to or whether you don't want it to. Now, I want us to zoom in on the autonomic branches. This is the last bit of biology that we're going to be doing, and then we're going to move on to the interesting stuff. Now, your autonomic nervous system has two main arms, okay? You've got the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. I want you to think of these as two sides of the same design, or two sides of the same coin. So when the sympathetic nervous system activates, your body prepares for action. Your heart rate increases, your breathing becomes faster, blood is redirected towards the muscle so you can get the hell out of there if you need to. Your digestion slows down because, girl, it is not time for snacks right now. Your pupils dilate so you can see more, and your muscle tension increases, and you're becoming much more alert. And this is what we like to call the fight or flight response. It is a survival response, but you don't only just fight or flight. No, there's also two other things that you could potentially do for the sake of survival. You can also push your body into what we call the freeze response or the fawn response. Now, freeze is when your body hits the brakes. While you're still feeling scared or feeling threatened on the inside, you can sit there and decide, you know what? Now's not the time to move. No, now's the time for me to be numb, stuck, to be quiet. And that's when you feel like you can't speak, you can't move, you can't do anything. Now, even though that sounds bizarre, it sounds counterproductive. Like, imagine you're in danger and you see a predator, and what do? You freeze. You freeze with the hope that they cannot see you or hear you. Your body hits the brakes while still feeling scared on the inside. You can say, do you know what? The safest thing I can do right now is fake death. Now, this next one is the fawn response. So fawn is when your body decides the safest option for me to do is to please. Yeah. So you rush over to smooth things over. So you go to whatever's about to attack you and you negotiate, you agree, you over apologize, or you make yourself small to avoid conflict or rejection. Now, I want you guys to really remember these 4 responses that you do when you feel threatened. Why? Because they're going to be very, very, very important for us to discuss why we do the things we do, why we make the decisions we make, why we react the way we react to things. Now, I know right now you're going to be like, what the hell is she talking about? But don't worry. Don't worry. I'm not going to sit here and teach you things that are not relevant. I don't have time for that. This is my spare time. We're not going to be learning boring things. Everything I teach you is going to be relevant to our topics of discussion. So your body essentially is so clever that it has different tactics that it takes to survive. And these are all part of the survival machinery, trying to keep you safe. Your sympathetic nervous system is there to keep you alive. It doesn't care about anything else. Now let's go here. This is the parasympathetic nervous system. What does it do? Well, it does the opposite. Your parasympathetic nervous system slows down your heart rate. It makes your breathing deepen, and then you feel hungry. You know, you're out of danger. Now you feel like, oh, I've worked out quite a bit of an appetite now. I need to eat. And your hormones recalibrate. And now you can repair and recover. And this system is just as important. It's just as important for your survival. This is what we call the rest and digest. This is where healing happens. Now, I want you to understand something. Your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system are not enemies. No. You're not trying to activate one so the other one doesn't activate. No, they're partners. Your innate design is not to stay in one phase. No, your innate design is to move between the two. Regulation is flexibility between activation and restoration. Let's put this into practice. Now, imagine this. Centuries ago, okay, a neighbouring tribe decides, we don't like you anymore. You guys have more resources than we do, but we're stronger than you, so we're going to attack your village. So they're coming, you hear it, all the village chiefs get together, and they're like, oh my God, they're going to come and attack us. So what happens? Your sympathetic nervous system switches on instantly. It's like, we got to survive, we're going to die. So your heart is pounding, your breathing's faster, your muscles are tense, okay? What's going to happen next? Are you going to fight? Are you going to flee? Are you going to freeze? Or are you going to fawn? Well, it all depends on the assessment that your sympathetic nervous system makes, okay? Now, let's take different scenarios. You go to the guy who spotted the opposite village. Listen, how big are they? They're big. You think we can take them? If they said to you, oh, they're tiny, there's only a few of them, you're going to fight. You've assessed it. I have a high chance of survival. Your body gets ready to fight them back. He comes and he says, there's loads of them and they're big. What are you going to do? You're going to get out of there. You're going to get the hell out of there. So your body's going to prepare to leave. Now, imagine Gary, okay? Gary is a small guy. He's not been blessed with a huge body. Another thing about Gary, he's not very fast. Well, everyone else was packing and leaving. He's like, what's going on? What's going on? And people are like, Gary, run! Run, Gary! Run! Gary's like, why are we running? Gary's head switches on because he's a bit slow as well. Gary's a bit slow. When he realises, hang on a second, I need to get out of here. right? He doesn't have the strength to fight. Okay, can't get out of there quickly enough. What does Gary do? He freezes. Gary gets caught. One advantage that Gary has is the gift of the gab. So he decides, I'm going to fawn. I'm going to apologise that my tribe had all of these resources and I will offer everything up on a platter. Okay, I'll negotiate. I'll diffuse the situation. And Gary does so. And Gary survives. Gary is also a survivor. Now, this is the thing I want you guys to realise. In every outcome, eventually the activation stops. Okay? So the fight or flight mode will eventually stop. Either you reach safety and then that's it. Now you're activating your parasympathetic nervous system. You get to have food, or you die. Okay? That's also, your parasympathetic nervous system is definitely working there. Or you're captured and you succumb to your fate. Although you might still be a bit stressed. Okay? Probably the worst option out of the three. But even then, you know, that original fear is gone. Okay, so you reach the parasympathetic. There is some kind of resolution. Whenever you activate your sympathetic, your body has to reach the end of that and activate the parasympathetic. You can't just live in a parasympathetic state and you can't just live in a sympathetic state. There is a resolution, and that is how your body is meant to function, okay? So your nervous system was designed for acute episodes of danger. Acute episodes of danger is healthy, okay? It's healthy. You're not designed for endless anticipation, and this is where it becomes very, very interesting for us here living in these modern times. Let's imagine us today. Your neighbour isn't attacking your village. They're not coming with weapons. They're just knocking on your door complaining about your dog or your cat or your kids, complaining about the noise or where you parked. They're not threatening your life. They're just there every day, pestering you. Or maybe it's not a neighbour. It's the constant emails that you're getting, or the constant deadlines, or the notifications, the group chat that never stops. So your nervous system activates constantly, and it's maybe not to the dramatic level of what Gary was feeling back in ancient warfare. You know, maybe it's not a 10 out of 10 in terms of danger scale, but maybe it's a mild 3 or 4 or a 5 or a 6. And here's the difference. Years ago, the threat ended. Okay, your village was taken over and that's it, it's over. But today it lingers on, it drips, it repeats, and there's no clear resolution. And before your system fully restores again, it activates again. So you never, ever, ever get to really rest and digest. Your sympathetic nervous system is constantly activated. If activation keeps happening, even at a level 3, 4, 5, and full recovery never quite completes, the system starts to recalibrate. And there's this concept in stress research that describes this as cumulative wear and tear. Repeated activation without adequate recovery creates strain across multiple systems. What does that mean? Well, heart rate variability will shift, your cortisol rhythms change, your sleep becomes lighter, muscle tension becomes baseline. But the idea is simple. If you keep activating a system without letting it reset, it adapts. And adaptation, even though it sounds positive, adapting to chronic stress means your baseline is shifting. So now you're no longer activating from calm, you're activating from slightly activated, which means smaller stressors now feel so much bigger. Not because they are bigger, but because you're carrying accumulated load. Okay, I'm going to give you guys another example. At the beginning of this, I talked about the saying, the straw that breaks the camel's back. Okay, let's talk about that camel. Let me tell you the full story of what happened to that camel. Now, a camel is built to carry weight. It's strong, yes. It is designed for load. And if you decided to load it with a very, very heavy load and you're walking a short distance, the camel's going to hate you, okay? It might keep side-eyeing you, but it will get you to where you need to get to. And then you completely unload and you let it rest and you let it recover. You know, it'll probably forget next time. It won't hold it against you, okay? The camel will be fine. Why? Because it was designed to carry the load. And it was also designed to rest and recover. However, imagine this same camel and you decide to put the tiniest load on it. But there's a condition. Every few miles, you add another small load onto it. But you never unload, so you just keep adding. and you walk a few more miles, and then you add another bundle. You walk a few more miles and you get another bundle, and you keep walking and walking. There is no rest. And now the camel is getting very, very, very tired, and it's looking at you like, excuse me, when are we taking a break? But you just keep going. There's no rest. There's no recovery. And even though each load that you are adding on its own might not be huge, this camel has been walking for hours. It's tired. It's thirsty. It needs a break. And then you decide to load one more bundle of straw, and it collapses. And people around you are saying, I think you need a new camel, love. Yeah, I don't think this camel's very strong. How's it just falling apart? You just added one small tiny bundle. What they didn't see was that the camel had no rest. There was no recovery. So it was actually never about that straw in the first place. It was the accumulation and the lack of rest. And your nervous system works exactly the same way. When activation repeats without full recovery, your baseline starts to shift. You're no longer activating from neutral. So it's not like you've had a break and then something traumatic happens, sympathetic nervous system goes on, and then you rest and then you're back to baseline. No. You're activating from already activated phases. So smaller stresses now start to feel bigger and bigger. Not because you've changed, not because you're weak. No. It's because your starting point has changed. And now you find smaller things are making you feel even more anxious than probably a few years back. I'm sure most of you guys have had this feeling whereby you're like, I don't understand. I went through a phase of my life where I went through this huge traumatic thing and I can handle it. And here I am, I'm crying because what? I spilt some tea on myself? I'm having a nervous breakdown? Like, what is wrong with me? Well, when you do have those feelings, think back and think, hang on, am I really crying because of the tea? Or is it that actually my starting point has now changed? I've not had a full recovery. I'm chronically under stress. And there's a term for this cumulative wear and tear. This term is known as the allostatic load. Okay, so allostatic load is the cumulative wear and tear on the body when your stress responses are triggered repeatedly without enough recovery in between. That wear and tear doesn't just affect how you feel. Unfortunately, it then goes on to affect your sleep, your hormones, your immune system, your digestion, your mood, and then, sadly, over time, your system recalibrates around survival. And that recalibration is what we experience as burnout. Okay, so burnout is not just tiredness. It's not, I just need a holiday. No. It's not you being dramatic or overreacting to small problems. Some people find that the point where they realize they're burnt out, it's the most trivial thing that triggers it. So burnout is what happens when your nervous system has been activated again and again and again and again without full restoration. And this has been going on for so long that recovery stops happening altogether. So then you wake up tired, even after you've slept. You rest, but you don't feel restored. Small things feel heavier than they used to. Your patience shortens, your focus drops, your tolerance narrows. You're not reacting to today alone, you're reacting from accumulated load. And then over time, as mentioned before, the system recalibrates. So now you're activating quicker. Smaller things are upsetting you more. And it's becoming harder and harder and harder for restoration to happen. It becomes harder to activate your parasympathetic nervous system because feeling like you need to survive, feeling threatened, that becomes your new baseline. And that shift where chronic stress quietly becomes your normal is what I call toxic physiology. You don't feel burnt out because you're weak. You feel burnt out because your nervous system has been adapting for a long time. You've been adapting to pressure, adapting to responsibility, unresolved stress, adapting to constant activation. Your nervous system was doing exactly what it was designed to do. It kept you functioning. It kept you performing. It kept you surviving until the cost became visible. And the cost is this: when survival becomes your baseline, restoration becomes harder. When activation becomes your default, feeling calm feels unfamiliar. When accumulated load builds quietly, collapse feels sudden. But it was never sudden. It was cumulative. That camel didn't fall because of that one straw. No, the camel was already carrying stuff. And once you understand that, stop asking, what's wrong with me? And you start asking, what has my system been carrying? What have I been carrying? And here's the next layer. Not everyone carries that load the same way. Some people become more anxious. Some people become irritated. Some people shut down. Some overwork. They have the same stress system, but different adaptation patterns. And that's what we're going to unpack in the next episode. This is Toxic Physiology, where we explain the science behind the chaos.